Okay, great. All right, so with that, that's all my announcements. So I'm going to turn it over to Robin and Scott to get their discussion going. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Yeah, well, hello, everyone. And we really appreciate you showing up again for our Tiny Talks on tiny house developments and communities. I've got with me Scott Banta here, and Scott is kind of going to take the lead today on a pro forma, the numbers and of a project that he's currently involved with, so that we can see an actual pro forma of a tiny house development. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you, Scott.
I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Can you all see that okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you see my cursor moving around?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Where I want to start today is, this is an Excel spreadsheet that we've developed that I use for almost all my projects. This format, if you will, in that everyone's going to change because we have months up here and then a year, and as the months and years change, obviously the thing will change. Sometimes we don't have future land use over here. Sometimes we don't have rezoning, but almost always we'll have pre-development and permitting and then closing the land acquisition. So when you come down here, if you're following my cursor, there's a worksheet entitled permit. So let me run through this real quickly. I like to put little X's up here because I'm a visual type person. So these X's are the months in which something is happening. So in this particular case, we're going to really get into the rezoning in April. We'll have some other things going on between now and then. We're working with the county to get the land under contract and some additional pieces, but for purposes of this, we're going to get it cranked in April. Funding sources, Robin and I were talking at the beginning, how we're doing our funding on this particular instance is we're looking at a total cost. I'll be coming back to this, but our total cost is about $3 million. When we get into the summary, we have a really outstanding balance of less than $2 million. But in terms of funding, we're going to need to commit to $3 million in order to get the job done. So our initial funding is we're doing a fund, F-U-N-D, which is a 506B fund. And our initial raise is going to be $750,000. We've raised $225,000 thus far. And what we did in this portion of the fund is we called part one or phase one of the fund 150,000. So we're able to now tell investors that we've sold out of the first phase or the first part of the initial funding. This balance of the funding, we're going to move to a 506, that should say C. $506C fund. And we're going to be looking to raise $6.5 million for that to do 3 projects. And the projects will overlap, and I'm going to show you what makes tiny house developments kind of unique in terms of the pro formas on either a sale or a rental situation for a small project. Anybody have any questions over here? This is
what is a 501 506B? I mean, it's not 506C is a nonprofit. What is a B?
No, these are funding vehicles. It's 506C,
oh, okay.
and there's a 506C.
Oh, okay.
The B is like an initial phase, and then it'll switch to a 506C when we go to the $6.5 million.
Can you explain what's an accredited investor and all of that a little bit?
Yeah, typically an accredited investor is somebody who has $1 million or more in assets, not including their personal residence, and they make over $200,000 a year. Typically, would put a person in the accredited investor standpoint.
And so you can utilize accredited investors. Can you use non-accredited investors when you're raising funds?
We can have up to 35 non-accredited investors,
There you go.
and we can have as many accredited as we want. So one of the things we're getting ready to do is in January, we'll have an office and we'll have our first employee part-time. And then our next employee that we're going to be looking to get is a grant writer, because there is a tremendous amount of money out there right now, government money of all types, both local and federal and veterans, et cetera. There's tons and tons of money out there. The question is, how do you go get it? And so we're going to dedicate part of our resources out of this fund here. Part of those resources are going to go to a grant writer, and we're going to look for grants that we can obtain money. A lot of the counties and cities that we're talking to are willing to potentially play. We told Volusia County that we'd give them a dollar for dollar reduction off our home sales prices. So let's say they gave us $100,000, we would reduce the overall sales price of the collective units by 100,000.
What does that do for the government?
What it does is it helps get to a more affordable number. And I'm going to kind of go through that in a few minutes when I go through the program.
Okay. All right.
All right. So over here, we're going to be looking at the various categories for what I call pre-development and permitting. We have survey and plat. Initially, you have surveys in the first couple of months. You're going to have the boundary survey, topo, and then possibly trees. Over here, toward the end of the completion of the permitting, you're going to get into your platting, and platting will be additional survey costs. So this is kind of a spread on how we would assume that the survey dollars are going to be spent. Civil engineering, in this particular case, we got a really good number. He's kind of doing a semi-donation of part of his fee into it. So up front, we have concept plan. And then in August, once we're in the pretty well done with the rezoning, we'll cut him loose to do the actual civil design. We have to have a landscape architect. Most municipalities or counties will require some sort of landscape plan. Typically, this is a landscape plan that's going to meet code. This will show the buildings, and they'll have a little circle, 2 circles around it to say we're going to have a plant here and a bush there and a tree here. And that's just to meet code. Later on, we'll get into the more design phase, which is toward the end of the engineering. So we'll actually design the area. This seems like a little number, but we're only talking a little over 2 acres. And out of the 2 acres, we have to leave an outside boundary of trees already. So our site is heavily treed. So our what they call a PUD, land unit development, or PD buffer. The PD buffer will be mostly trees that are existing that we're going to keep. Architect I have in a different spot. There's a thing called the level 1 or phase 1 environmental. You could figure somewhere in the $2,000 to $3,000 range for that. That's all that cost is. If you're going to do any type of government or bank type financing, et cetera, you're going to have a level 1 environmental. Assuming that there's no issues, if they go out and they find barrels and all kinds of other things out there, then you may have to have what's called the level 2. We talked about that a few weeks ago. The level 2 is where they would do more strenuous. We're really good about making sure that no barrels and those kind of things are not there when our consultant goes out to do his report. I can't say more than that, but
enough said.
We typically don't want to have a level 2 if we don't have to. Excuse me.
Level 2 could get into them. millions of dollars if they find something for the cleanup.
Yeah, we talked
Right.
about the dry cleaner in Sanford, for example, and
Yeah.
that was a tremendous. In this particular case, I only have a small amount in for environmental here because he's already done a quick cursory look at the site, and there's no environmental issues at all. 22 units does not require a traffic study. When we get up around 50 or 60 units, I'm assuming that we're going to have a traffic study. Typically, a traffic study is going to be in the range of 7,500 for us. Here, that'll go up to probably 100 to 150 type units. You start getting up around 200, it may go up a little bit. That also depends on whether or not they have to put down traffic counters in the road. Those, you'll see them once in a while when you drive along a road. There's some almost like they're just strips that go across, and what it does is it counts the cars when it goes by. So sometimes you have to have car counts. I'm doing a traffic study right now that we're hoping to, we submitted the methodology to the county or the city. It's the city of Deltona, and we're hoping to get away from having to do traffic counts. Geotechnical is also known as soil testing. So you can write down soil testing there if you want. There's usually preliminary upfront numbers. I'm using 2,600 here. They're going to go out and do a couple of quick holes, soil borings, to make sure we don't have any underlying clay layers or issues that this particular site's a wooded site. Nothing's been happened on it. A lot of times you can look at what they call the historical aerials. In this particular area, the aerials go back to 1942. So I always do a research, it's part of my due diligence, where I look at the historical areas to see if the property's been used for anything else over the past 50, 60, 70 years.
Where do you get your aerials to go back that far, Scott? And the ones that I look at the property appraiser's office go back 4 or 5 years, but they don't go back that far. Do you have to go someplace different to get that from, other than the property appraisers?
Yeah, usually Public Works will have them.
Okay.
For a county. I get all mine typically from the county. Orange County, for example, has them online. You can just go back and pull them up. So does some of them. You used to have to go to their office and, you know, look at the maps and figure out where it was, etc. There'll be some more geotech about halfway through as your engineer is getting started with the project. What typically happens is when your civil engineer does your initial design layout, what'll happen is you have the, you're gonna have to plug the soil borings where the roads are and also where the retention ponds are. In the retention ponds, they do the engineer does a calculation on what they call drawdown. So the pond will fill with water in a storm event, and then it has to drain within a certain period of time, and they'll load a second storm event on top of it, and then it has to drain in again a certain amount of time, depending on what your requirements are of that jurisdiction or the water management district. And that's what they call a drawdown. So they have to take the soil test. If it's really dense soil, you may have to dig out some extra soil and put more permeable soil back in the hole. We also typically use retention ponds to get fill for the site. So when we need site fill, we dig the retention ponds. Sometimes you can dig them over what we call over dig. Most of the times the water management's in the 12 to 14 foot maximum depth. And we've been known to over excavate if there's really good soil down there. We over excavate and then put some of the bad soil that we find on site back in the hole, if that makes any sense. So we can maybe go down to 16 feet, pull out an extra 4 feet of good soil, put 4 feet of bad soil back in, put a foot or two of good soil back on top of the bad soil, and that's a way you can ameliorate some of your site work costs, depending on what your site is. Especially if you have wet, clayey type soils that have a lot of clay in them. They're not going to stand up for house pads or road pads in many instances. We always include some money in for development management. We'd like to pay ourselves to go out and kind of watch the process. Permit application fees are always different for each jurisdiction, and whether or not you have a water management, or if you have any of your, if you have Florida Fish and Wildlife or Game and Fish, or the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which mostly is now being handled on the state level instead of the Corps. We used to have to get U.S. Army Corps of Engineer permits. Those are all being handled statewide now, or at least in Florida they are. And then we tossed in a contingency. So in this particular case right here, you can see that we're planning on spending $86,500, or roughly $4,000 a unit on pre-development costs. When we were talking in previous weeks about those risk dollars, these are your risk dollars. So pretty much very few investors want to invest in these risk dollars.
And if they do, they want like a 30% return or something on their money if it works.
Yeah, the high risk, high reward type deal. So we're paying what's going to be 35% to some of our monies, 30% to some of our monies, and then 22% on a lot of them that we're raising up in here, this 225. First 75 was at 70% over 2 years. The next 150 was at 60% over 2 years. So that's like 30% a year. And then the balance is at 22% annual. Anybody have any questions on any of this in here? All right, then I go over to impact utility. This is unincorporated Volusia County. So I've got roads, fire, cultural, which is recreational, local, and then I got a district cultural, and then we got schools. So those total 9,200 and change. My water connection fees, depending on my meter sizes, are 1,400. My wastewater or sewer is 2,300. The total there is 13,000. I threw in a contingency factor. So to make it simple, I just using 14,000. So before I've really done anything, I've got 4,000 in permit. And then once I pull a building permit, I'm going to have 14,000 that I have to write that check. Typically, in most places, you do not have to write that check until you pull your building permit. Some instances where there's a lack of water or sewer availability, sometimes you have to pay the water and sewer fees up front in order to reserve the capacity for your project. So that in that case, it'd be 1,400, and 2,400 be 3,800 that we'd have to pay up front. We wouldn't do that until we know that we had the project zoned, obviously, and that the project was a go.
Right.
Then we get into our construction costs. Construction is really interesting here for tiny houses because it's such a short time frame. And when you're doing 22, what we're doing is we're calling our starts here. We'll have our land development completed in January of 24. So in February, March, and April is when we're going to start building our houses. We basically think of it as being a 2-month process, but here we gave ourselves the 3rd month until we actually start closing the houses, selling the houses, closing. So what we did is, in this particular case, I just averaged it at $396. We're at $178 a foot, which is 70,000 and a half, 7,500 per house. And then we set it up in draws, where we take the draws here, shown here, 60% draw 1, 40% draw 2, and these numbers correlate back to the 8 times this number is this number here, and 7 times this number is this number here, and this becomes our monthly cost outlay. This transfers to line 21 of the summary so that I can come in here and change this, and let's say make this 200, and the whole thing will change.
Right.
So
And
that's kind of nice. Go ahead.
is that 1.5 million that you need right there? where you start making sales. I see your numbers got up to almost 500,000, and then they started going down to, do they start going down after you make sales? Is that how that works? Your
Again,
cash
I'm
need?
sorry.
Do you have
Yeah,
a cash need?
Yeah, I'm going to come back. Let me come back to that when I get into the summary, if that's okay.
Okay.
Then over here, we do the same 60 and 40%. What we're charging is an overview construction management overview fee of 5,000 a unit. That lets us have the ability to put a superintendent out there, possibly. So again, the construction cycle for 22 houses from start to finish and out is 3 months, which is incredible. When we get to the summary, you'll see how the cash flow works. It's really kind of interesting. And I'm going to go over there right away. So when you're doing your pro formas, again, I like this little this is my cheat sheet up at the top. Investors seem to like this too. So here I'm involved in the rezoning and pre-development until December. Same thing with permitting. Then I close on my land, and we talked about that in several of the past meetings, where the ultimate or optimum is that once you have all your permits is when you want to close your land. Sometimes you have to do it earlier. And then this. You can scooch along over here to when we're doing the infrastructure. We're giving ourselves 3 months for the infrastructure, which is probably generous, but we're trying to err on the conservative side a little bit. We're allowed in most instances in Florida to start vertical construction once we have what they call stabilized road and water available to the site. So once we have those two things, we can start our home construction. So that's why I've started 8, 7, and 7, and then we have our closings 8, 7, and 7. These are important because these numbers will tie back into these numbers down below. So this is my cheat sheet at the top. That way I can remember what we're doing, and then make sure that the numbers flow down the categories here. Like this 8 goes to 8 closings, 7 closings, 7 closings, etc. Then we'll come over here, and the next thing that everybody wants to see is what we call your sources of funds. Where is your money coming from? Now, we do have capital investment, but if you put the capital investment up here, it throws off your numbers, and it makes it look like you're selling way too high, and then the cost is way too high. So we come down here to the bottom, and we have our investment required monthly. So this you can phase however you would want to phase. We've phased it so that here's my monthly cash flow and my cumulative cash flow. We just decided that we wanted 100,000 up front to start. That pays for our permitting, the 86,000. And then over here, we're looking for a capital infusion of $1.5 million, $1,550,000. And then you'll see that from a monthly basis, that starts to go out to, we've got $1.7 million as our theoretical highest out. So while they're going to require us to fund the $3 million of cost over here, of the total cost, they're going to want to see that. We believe that our total out, because of the impact of the sales, like Robin mentioned, you start to look up here. I mean, we're selling and receiving home sales value almost before we've spent all the money. And that's really exciting from a financial perspective, a pro forma standpoint. I mean, we haven't even spent all the money yet, and we're going to net $1.2 million back in sales after looking at 6.5% over here in closing costs. That make sense?
So on column number 12, if you scroll down, what is your cash need at that point, March, which is column number 12? If you scroll down a little bit to see what that is, that's right before, that's right before you're going to start seeing. Yeah.
That's correct.
So basically after that, you're making sales, and that as those sales come in, your cash need goes down. And so it looks like, according to this here, investment required monthly, you have a negative investment of 450,000 on April, and a negative investment of 750, and then 450. So is that your profit that you're looking at?
No, these are theoretically returning that 1,550, and then the 100,000 we had, this 1,650,000 is returned here.
Okay, so that total of 450, 750, and 450 is 155, 1,550,000. Yeah.
No, this one here.
That one down there. Okay.
Because
that's what you borrowed.
Plus, that's what we needed from our investors, we think, in order to do this deal total.
Well, how will you, so somebody's going to have to come up with another almost 100,000, less than 100,000, because you got 1,650, and then you got 1,711 under your cumulative cash flow. So you need a little bit more on March month 12 than you actually raise. So somebody's going to have to come up with, you know, 60, 70, $80,000 right there.
Yeah, possibly. Based on this right here, some of these may actually come earlier, but you're right. In this particular case, you know, what we would do is probably put another 100 grand in here or something, so that we covered that shortfall.
Yeah, gotcha. So everybody understand that? Anybody? Are we losing them all?
Catherine put her thumbs up. She likes that thumbs up. Thanks, Catherine. Actually, Scott, I didn't want to interrupt you in the middle of your numbers, but Eric has a question, and he might have to unmute himself to explain it, but he wrote in the chat on foundation, and then he wrote owners mortgaging homes. Those are both questions.
Yes, the answer is our program is to build tiny homes on slab foundations. So that's number one. So we're not building them on wheels. Number two is, and that's why the cost is so much higher. And then number two is our houses are going to be like what we call a horizontal condo. The land will be owned by the association, just like you would in a high-rise condo. But each owner will own their own home, and they're totally financeable through FHA, VA, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac in terms of the secondary market. So they're eligible for everything.
That's a good point, guys. That's a real good point. That's smart. In other words, the land will be owned by XYZ company, Woodland Cove Tiny
HOA.
Houses, or yeah. And so you'll have a maintenance fee or some kind of association HOA fee that everybody pays in addition to their mortgage, correct?
Yes. Yeah. But we also are doing that, as you remember, and let me just go here real quick. Because this will make more sense for everybody. Just got a new rollerball mouse. So can you all see this okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So our program is to put our units around in like a circle, or this in a case of an oval, and then have the parking external. So inside here we have barbecue grills, fire pits, flagpole, walkways, heavily landscaped. There'll probably be a couple little water features in here, park benches, etc. Each unit has a 10-foot deep porch across the front, and this is all to promote the social connectivity. So these are all built on slabs.
Are they one story?
Mostly one story, yeah. We're doing an option of a loft.
Okay, one
Habitable.
story or one story with a loft. Okay,
Yeah, it's a loft.
Appendix Q.
So before you go forward, Eric has another question. How do you manage
Sure.
association moving forward? And
we will probably manage the association at the beginning ourselves. I have a real estate license. I don't have a CAM license, but one of my best friends has what they call a CAM, C-A-M, Community Association Manager license. We'll probably hire him for as a just to be the head of it, and we'll manage it ourselves until we can get it to the point where our goal is to do 2,000 of these in the next 3 years in the multiple communities. So chances are we would retain the management for several reasons. Number one is we anticipate receiving government money from the county. And because of that, we're going to have the affordability, sustainability requirement. So if you buy a unit from us, and let's say the market goes haywire in the next 2 years again and they double, you can't just sell it. You have to sell it to somebody who is in the same income bracket that you were. So that's to have the sustainability of the affordability, if that makes any sense. So they're not going to give us $100,000 and then let one of the owners make 200 grand on their unit because they got a good deal or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important in terms of any government money that we're going to get. We're anticipating proving the sustainability. And then, so from a record keeping and everything else standpoint, we're probably going to control that at the beginning.
so his second question, what do you think monthly CAM fees will be?
The other thing we want to do is because of the way our site plan looks is we want to have common maintenance. So on this here, here's our little community building. There'll be a garden area over here. So all this trees and whatever grass and maintenance and bushes and everything in here will all be commonly maintained. We think we'll probably be in the $50, $60 a month range. Again, we're going to have laundry facilities in the little club. All those laundry dollars are going to go back into the HOA to help sustain the HOA, et cetera.
Who pays the taxes on the land? The HOA?
Yeah, that'll be, actually everybody will get an assessment for that, just like normal taxes.
Okay, so you split up the common areas amongst the 22 people, or how does that work? Because
Yes,
it's one
that would
parcel,
be-
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Same thing with insurance. The grounds insurance would be as a separate assessment. Over here, I'm actually going to go, you can see how we spread the money if you want to go through the program. I'm not going to do that right now, but we have the recap page, which is a recap of what we call our sources of funds, where the funds that came in. And in this particular instance, we're doing an average price right now at $170,000 a unit. We're taking 6.5% off for closing costs. We do that up at the top so that we can show what our net number is. So we're netting $158,950 here. So if the county gave us, let's say, $10,000 a unit in grant money for whatever, call it impact fees or reduced anything fees, we would take that 10,000 right off this 158. It was our promise to them.
So that would give you $220,000 more to add to the 158,950.
Yeah, so we would have in here, let's say, 220 coming in from and then we would reduce the sales price of the house a little bit from the 170 to 1.
Okay, dollar for dollar. Well, then that's going to keep the number 158,950 the same.
correct.
Gotcha.
The use of the funds, and this again is all in the summary, but this just recaps it because everybody likes to see a one-pager. They want to see the spreadsheet, but usually that's towards the back of your overall package. They want to see this page here, and they believe that where you're spreading those numbers is correct. In this case, we have the 86, or this is per unit, the 86 for the permitting, et cetera. Architecture, we have 9,000 for 4 sets. Our land acquisition is 16 a unit, 355, including some closing costs. The impact fees were the 14,000. The infrastructure, the home building costs come straight off this other page right here.
Mm-hmm.
That transfers back up to the summary, and the summary transfers to the recap. We're putting in 100,000 for the laundry and vending machines, and some, construction management was a $5,000 fixed fee. We got some money in for marketing, property taxes and insurance, development management, again, legal, accounting, and professional. And then in here, if you had bank loan and bank interest, you could put it in there. And then we have deficit funding for the association. The first few months of the association, we're going to have to feed that in order to make it work. And we have a contingency in there. So our total budget is $136,822 per unit, or a total of $3,010,000. We have shared
What about
this with.
What about your maintenance building? Where would that come out of? The building maintenance, that thing? Yeah.
It's in our laundry and vending building.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
We may have a little portion of that would have a little roll-up garage door and a golf cart or whatever. We probably plan on subbing everything out though. So.
Gotcha.
What's nice about this is we've been able to share this with the county, and we said, based on everything, that we want to be open book with you. And, I think that's best for both sides, and they've been really appreciative of it. We're working on a $22,000 per unit profit for a total of $486,000. It works out to just under a 17% margin. We've told them that we would cap our margin at 17.5% on projects that we did in Volusia County.
Well, that's cool. So you take the 136,882, which is your total use of funds per unit, and your profit, and that would be your sales price of the units. If you total those two.
Sales price comes back up to the top. So we had 22 home closings at $1.7 million is $3,740,000. Whoops. $170,000 less the 11 in closing costs is $158,000. So where we make our money is, here's our profit, but in here we also had construction management fee and a development management fee, and we could possibly be part of the 6.5%. Usually we have about a 1.5-ish% real closing costs. Title insurance is 0.0055 generally. Doc stamps on the deed in Florida are 70 cents, so that's $1.25 or 1.25%, and then there's usually extra closing costs. In this particular case, we're using 2.5% for a buyer broker and 2.5% for the selling broker.
Gotcha.
Chances are we'll probably be the selling broker.
So you'll get a little bit on that. Okay.
Yeah.
That
and
makes
just so
sense.
you know, in terms of funding this $170,000 house, we have local mortgage companies. First Horizon, which used to be Iberia Bank Mortgage, will do on this particular house, they'll do a $160,000 mortgage with no PMI, and they'll do a 10% soft second down payment assistance. So
that's incredible.
The total
with no
cost
PMI.
The PMI is amazing. And if I look at 160,000 in present value and a 5.5% interest rate, my monthly payment is $908.46.
Hmm.
And if you added, let's say $300 for taxes, insurance, and maintenance, you're at $1,200. You can't rent an efficiency in this area for less than $1,500.
You got to add your $50 for your HOA fee to that too.
Well, no, I took the 908 and added 300 for
Oh,
taxes,
okay.
insurance, and the HOA. So
Okay.
you're at basic, give or take $1,200.
So if they're going to
Which-
do assistance on the down payment, does that mean they're going to pay the down payments? And so all you have to basically pay is closing costs?
Yeah, it's a couple grand to get into that house
Wow.
if you use First Horizon Mortgage on this case. So in
Guys, do you
terms of
see
the-
what he's got here? I mean, for 2000, you get your tax return of $2,000. I mean, and you go buy a house and in 30 years you own it.
Right,
That's
and you're still paying less than people with their efficiency.
Wow, you got a good thing here. That's great.
it's kind of neat. I have one of the gals who's in the Planning and Zoning Commission or the Planning and Zoning Department at Volusia County has already said she'll take one. Her husband died
Right.
a couple years ago. She's got this big house and a big lot, and she wants to be in this social connectivity scenario. And what's really kind of neat about this is when you go in here, let's say there's a young couple here that has a little kid, and our gal over here, she's in her 50s and she lives here. All these people will know each other. And so this couple, let's say, wants to get away to go out and have a dinner for a couple hours. This lady over here is going to go over and babysit their kids for them.
Mhm.
And the social interaction between the group is just going to be amazing. And
Wow.
on Friday night, everybody's going to bring their wine and their hot dogs and hamburgers and potato salad and everything out here and sit around the campfire and hold hands, sing Kumbaya and eat s'mores. I mean, the whole thing is, and that's why we put the parking out. The other thing is by putting this type of arrangement is we're telling the government that we're not going to have any internal streets. So it's never going to look like a trailer park slum type place.
Mhm.
A lot of the old trailer parks can get pretty ratty without the common maintenance, et cetera. And so we're particularly going to avoid that.
And do you have any
Can I
problem
interrupt?
with fire trucks getting in there?
We have the ability to come in here, and we have an area here, which we may shift these around a little bit so that they can
Okay.
drive in, and we'll have to have a stabilized area, but we're already going to have the walkway through here, so they'll be able to
Right.
get in.
Got it. Go ahead, Leanne.
Catherine has her hand up.
I was just curious that, how does the parking assist with, people that are less abled or handicapped as far as if are the houses closest to the parking going to be more for disabled people?
Well, this is all going to be connected by a series of walkways, which you don't see here. So we'll have different walkways that connect, but this whole site from end to end is only 370 feet. And one
Okay.
of my best friends does probably 40% of the apartment market studies. And that's from here to here is less than 200 feet. And that's just not a very far distance when you start to look at normal apartments or townhouses or whatever. So
Okay, I was just curious.
we're quite comfortable that that's not going to be an issue for folks. And even myself, because I use a walker to get around, so I'm a great testimony for this.
You get to test it. Okay. Good. Will there be carts or something to help people with their groceries and things?
Absolutely. Yep. Just kind of like if you were in a condo, a high-rise condo,
Oh,
they
okay.
have the carts downstairs where you could go ahead and put your groceries and everything, and then you wheel it from your space to your house, unload it, and then just bring it back. They'll probably be over here in some kind of a little shed area, or we'll do some kind of pavilion thing to
All right,
put them in
excellent.
there.
Thank you for sharing that. You
Yeah,
lower
we're
my-
going to fence the three sides. we're going to do that really more for us, for our people than the neighbors, because we really don't want the neighbors coming in. And then along the front, we'll do some sort of a wrought iron type of open fence. And we will not gate it, but outside of that, it's pretty restricted access.
Beautiful.
I forgot how
The other
big
thing
this
we're doing-
lot was. How big is this lot?
2.6 acres.
2.6. Okay, gotcha.
So we're generally getting in the neighborhood of 10 units per acre, plus having the little community building. The community building is not going to be a whole lot. It'll be a place where people could go and gather. They'll have laundry facilities in there, very small mini kitchenette, almost like a hotel thing, with a microwave and a small refrigerator and a sink. And outside of that, maybe a little room for some maintenance equipment. So it's not going to be a lot, but it's just it's mainly for the laundry, the vending machines, because in a 400 or 600 square foot house, that stack washer and dryer takes up roughly 3 feet by 3 feet or 30 inches by 30 inches. But when you have a little airway around it, it's call it 3 feet by 3 feet. So, that's 9 square feet out of your 400 or 500 square feet. That's a lot of people don't want to give that up. And the machines they're making now, I was in a commercial facility on Sunday checking it out, and the machines that they have right now are really efficient. They have different sizes if you want to put a comforter in, or you could do a smaller both washer and dryer right now.
Cool.
The other things that we're doing is in case anybody's interested in this, there's some buzzwords that are out there right now. We've got we're calling it workforce attainable housing. We're not calling it affordable. Nobody seems to like the word affordable anymore. We're doing what's called low impact development. A lot of our retention is going to be in the parking lot. A lot of this may be brick pavers and or what they call turf blocks. Turf blocks looks almost like a cinder block, but it's made out of a porous clay type material, like almost like a paver, and the water goes through it. We're doing green stormwater management practices, which is really cool. We're doing what's trademarked now. My partner's trademarking energy stingy construction. The utility bills on these, the electric bill will be less than, probably less than $80 a month. The other thing we're most likely going to do to save our residents some money is master meter it for water and sanitary. Most places have a minimum charge, and they're usually anywhere from $27 to more dollars per month. A lot of people in a tiny home are not going to use that much. So if we master meter it, we can then go ahead and allocate out part of that money to everybody. And we were anticipating the water bills to be the water and sewer to be less than $20 a month. So it doesn't sound like much, but that's $84 a year or more. My water bill where I live is over $50 because we irrigate with that water. So, I mean, if you're 20 versus 50 or 20 versus 30, call it 10 times 12 is 120 a year, or 30 times 12 is 360 a year. Again, it's trying to minimize the impact and make it more affordable, if you will. We're going to use extensive what they call xeriscaping, which is also known as permaculture, PERMA culture, which is the use of water-resistant natural landscaping elements that use less water, et cetera. We're going to have a community garden area, grills, barbecue grills, fire pits, picnic tables, benches, pavilions, walkways. We'll have a little dog walk area, et cetera. So what we want to do is all our projects to be what they call demonstration projects, where we want the city or the county to be able to point at it and say, look what we did. And I just got a call today from actually an hour before we started this, from the assistant to the city manager of the city of Longwood. I talked to a Longwood commissioner the other night at a Christmas tree lighting ceremony, and she was the one that introduced tiny house legislation into the city of Longwood, and they were all excited. And I just sent them our presentation package, and they already called back and said the city manager wants to meet. So we're gaining some traction here.
Yeah, it
Scott,
sounds
can
like,
you expand on what stingy construction is?
Yeah, basically we're putting the insulation on the outside of the house more so than the inside. My partner just built a 2,400 square foot house, and the main thing is there's 5 things to do with energy stingy, and the number one thing is have coverings over your windows so there's no direct sunlight into the windows. Most people don't understand that, but anyway, so by employing those techniques and having heavy duty insulation, we're going to use metal roofs, heavily insulated metal roofs. We're doing that for low maintenance. We're also that are highly water resistant, very lightweight. You can shoot a shotgun at them and it won't dent them, or it barely dent them. And they're extremely low maintenance. So we're looking at those type of things for our outside. You can also put lap siding or brick or other patterns down. And this is a poured material, kind of like they did tilt wall construction of concrete, where you can go ahead and put your, let's say, lap siding down, and when they pull the panel out, the panel's only 2 inches thick and it looks like lap siding or stucco or brick, or you know, combination of stucco and brick, or a combination of lap siding and brick, or whatever you want to do. They just put that stuff down in the form. So
Will all the homes
that's-
have the same like coloring and look the same, or will the buyers get to decide colors, etc.?
we're going to have the same basic shell, but we're going to have a lot of outside variation, what we call foo-foo. So some of them may have, you know, like a straight shed roof. Some of them may have just an angle where one side of the roof is higher than the other. Some will look more modern. Some will look more, I can show you kind of an idea here. Without the big front porch, this is kind of what we're looking at. We're probably only going to be one step up instead of a couple steps, but they're all going to have the metal roof, and they'll have little porches and, you know, cutesy railings and stuff like that, heavily landscaped. And this is a view of what it could look like. Whoops. That's the inside. That's a cut through with the picnic tables and stuff in there. And you'll see that houses they're basically the same size, but they have a lot of different variation into the, and it was really important to Volusia County that they didn't all look the same. This kind of gives you an aerial perspective of it. Where the parking is out here, and then the houses are all around in a circle.
Nice.
well, Scott, we're at top of the hour. Are you at a good stopping point, or should we?
I'm good.
Could we kind of wrap it up and then we can pick it up next time?
Yeah, next time we can go through. Yeah, next time we can go through the rental. I did one for rental too, but so we'll go through that next time.
All right. If you want to stop your sharing.
Oh, there we go.
All right. Very good. And yeah, guys. So next time will be January 4. You want to go ahead and kind of wrap us up here, Leanne, and all of this will be available it's recorded and will be available on our back office.
Right, in our member portal. Well, guys, that'll wrap it up for the evening, and we'll see you guys more for Tiny House Neighborhood Development on January the 4th. It'll be 2023. So if nobody has any more questions, we'll hopefully see you guys tomorrow night for our inspector chat Q&A, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Have a
for
great holiday, everybody.
being here. Yeah.
Happy
you
Merry
so much.
Christmas.
Holiday.
Happy New Year.
Bye,
Merry
everyone.
Christmas.
Thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.